Ole Miss might really be playoffs or bust as the House lawsuit settlement is now in view.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Ole Miss going all in this season with the help of the Grove Collective. They built a roster at the level that we have not seen within the rules of the sport, but those rules are about to potentially change drastically and cost Ole Miss in the ballpark of about $30 million per year per Ross Dellinger. We look at what college sports might resemble in 2040 and who has done the best going all in this season. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you very much for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. The week of the 4th of July, July 2nd, we are going to have a meet and greet in the Jackson I-20 corridor area. July 2nd will be the date, but the time and location is to be determined. But be on the lookout for something between Madison and Flowood, something like that. Also, the Rebel Road Trip, sponsored by Dead Soxy, will be in Corinth, Mississippi, June 13th at 6 p.m. at the Crossroads Arena in Corinth. Lane Kiffin, Keith Carter, and all of them will be there. I think this might be an opportunity to get the mayor of Corinth, Mr. Tom Vanderford, out and see what's going on there as well. Just thinking out loud. And there's still time to join the Grove Collective and help the Ole Miss football team go to the top. You can still go there at thegrovecollective.com and join today. All right, so today is going to be an interesting show. It's going to be a little bit of a stream of consciousness show, and my thoughts are probably not as organized as they need to be, so bear with me. But Ole Miss has done a pretty fantastic job of going all in this season. We've talked about that for the better part of the last 6 months, about how all in Ole Miss is for the 2024 season. They absolutely are. Now, with the announcement that they are close to settling the House case, and we'll tell you what all that means in just a second, that all-in statement from the last 5 months might be more than we even know. I mean, Ole Miss has brought in some really good players over the last couple of years, but this year in particular, Juice Wells coming in, Walter Nolan coming in, Daquan Wright coming in. I mean, lots of stuff. Princely Amon Mielen coming in. All of this and this Ole Miss going all in type year is absolutely the case. Ole Miss is trying to make the playoffs. They were trying to do this whenever they were, just acting within their current rules. There was no sense of urgency of the way things are going ending. And right now, the House case, which is a lawsuit out in, I think, California, maybe, between them and the NCAA, is basically getting close to being settled. And once it gets settled, everything's going to change. And we don't know exactly how it's going to change. We don't know the rules. It's going to be another Wild West type period, essentially. But this period is probably going to end after this season. The players that have been accumulating and all that, you really can't affect that. But next season, it seems like it's going to be a little bit different. And when you look at the House ruling, the first thing that pops up is this one. At the end of it all, this is from Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger, there's a steep price tag, as much as $300 million per school over the 10-year settlement agreement. That figure assumes the school, one, meets the revenue distribution cap of $21 million. Okay. If you don't do that, you'll have less players. That's the problem. You kind of have to go all in on that. $2 million and with withheld NCAA distribution for back damages, potentially from the NCAA tournament, and as much as $10 million in additional scholarship costs related to the expansion of a sports-specific roster size. Now, we're going to get into all the new rules that are going on as well. And the reason that this is the preferred, listen, when I say this, this is the preferred price tag, it is because of this. They released a document and said, however, the document notes the tab will be significantly larger and the timeline significantly shorter with a loss in court. The document outlines settlement pros and cons and offers alternatives. And if the settlement is rejected, and if the NCAA loses in court, which the NCAA loses in court right now, for some, an expected outcome based on previous result, the estimated $20 billion in damages would likely be payable immediately after final judgment, not over 10 years. And the document notes a reality that in all likelihood would result in the NCAA and the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12 and the ACC all filing bankruptcy. While bankruptcy may temporarily derail the active antitrust cases, it would move litigation to the bankruptcy judge for a decision and require restructuring of a new model that would open schools to new direct claims from plaintiff attorneys. It is in Ole Miss's best interest to settle this right now, to be over. The $30 million a year for essentially 10 years, you do that. You absorb that. We talked about the potential for the House case yesterday on yesterday's show, but it is a bigger number than even I imagine. It is a situation where do not expect Ole Miss to have any facility upgrades in the foreseeable future. Do not expect Ole Miss to fire any coaches in the foreseeable future. You have to go. Whenever you look at a school athletic budget, we talked about this, 110, 111, $120 million. All of a sudden, if you just shave $40 million off the top and cut that by 2/3, you are at a significant disadvantage over your neighbors. Now, they're going to have to withstand that as well, but schools like Texas A&M and Texas and Alabama, the $170 million budgets that Ole Miss are having to compete with, all of a sudden that's going to be more difficult to try and do that whenever you're doing it at about an $80 million clip per year. Now, this also comes into frame where the NCAA in their article had some seemingly negative words about collectives. They do not like collectives. Walker Jones and the Grove Collective, a huge friend of mine. So I'll go to the mattresses for them, but the NCAA is not on board with collectives. So they're going to think about moving stuff in-house for the revenue sharing and trying to clamp down on collectives. That looks like what they're supposed to do. And I have questions into the Grove Collective and all that about previous plans and how they're going to attack this after this year. So this year is of the utmost importance for Ole Miss football. This year is about going all in really a lot of ways because everything's going to change and we don't know where Ole Miss is going to sit after the dust settles. We think they're going to do well. We have an early adopter as a head football coach. We have an early adopter as a head basketball coach, and Coach Yo as a head women's basketball coach is an early adopter as well. They have shown the ability to navigate whenever the ebbs and flows of this NIL market happened. So I have confidence that they're going to be able to figure it out and we're going to be in fairly decent shape. Okay. But that doesn't change the fact that Ole Miss is in the best position that it's been in to potentially win a national title in my lifetime. And you have to go back until they actually did win a national title in 1962 for an Ole Miss football team that has been in this level of position. So Ole Miss being all in, Ole Miss being playoffs or bust. Now, with this House settlement coming into view, this has become even more real, essentially, because we don't know what the future brings. We know that after this year, this is the last dance class. That going into a new NIL world, that going into another possibly no collective world, into a world with no walk-ons. They're going to do away with the most pure of student athletes in college sports, the walk-on. They're going to do away with that as well. It's one of those situations to where, yes, I get the fact that you played football in 1995 and you missed out on the NIL stuff. I get that. So many people were worried about whether or not they could do this that nobody was looking out and trying to decide if they should do this. It's a situation. Ole Miss is in a perfect spot for the 2024 season. 2025 and beyond, it's a crapshoot at best. And we'll talk about that. We're going to enjoy this football season as much as humanly possible. And I recommend that everybody else that is following Ole Miss football does exactly the same thing. Enjoy this football season. Have a blast, because the unknown that is coming around the corner, I don't know. I think we're going to be all right, because Ole Miss has, like I said, has an early adopter at football coach, basketball coach, and women's basketball coach. The baseball coach has not shown to be an early adopter, but the baseball coach, in my opinion, is not going anywhere, because when you're due to pay $300 million over a decade, all of a sudden paying a over-exorbitant buyout, it's problematic at best. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Now, we are going to talk about exactly what this House ruling is going to mean for Ole Miss, for walk-ons, for all of this stuff. We're going to stream of consciousness, work it out, and we're going to talk about what college sports looks like in 2040, in 16 years, okay? From Deuce McAllister to 2016 to Shea Patterson. That's the gap that we're going to cover, so stick around for that. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for women winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find out exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24-hour sports streaming channel program for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right, so let's get into the House ruling in itself. Now, we're not going to go too far into the weeds on it, because I think this is a situation whenever you ask around at message boards and you bring it up, and you just bring up that this case is happening, there's a ton of people that just don't know about it, and they don't understand it. They don't think necessarily that this is that big of a deal, because it's not all over the news. It's not something that they're necessarily interested in. Now, one of the things that you need to realize in this is that Yahoo and Ross Dellinger recovered a doc that said the NCAA could face $20 billion in damages and bankruptcy if the proposed settlement offer is not agreed upon. It is currently going through the voting situation right now, to where you can get that approved. And this weekend, Friday or something like that, the board of directors will vote on the fact of whether or not the settlement gets approved. And then they present to the plaintiff's attorney, and they in turn decide whether or not they're going to take it. If they don't take it and they go to this, it could be the end of college sports as we know it, honestly. College sports as we know it, if they do not accept this settlement, could be no more. You're looking at a situation with the settlement over 10 years. Ole Miss is due to pay $300 million over those 10 years. Now, part of that is through the NCAA just holding back on distribution. Part of that is on the revenue sharing. There's a lot of things in that $300 million number. But the fact of the matter is, all of those things, those $300 million, they don't exist right now. So you can't count what's going on right now. So that's $300 million out of that money. But if the settlement gets rejected, which it's possible it could get rejected, it's very possible. You could have a $20 million lien on the SEC, the NCAA, the Big 12, the Big 10, the ACC, heck, the Colonial Athletic Conference, the D2 conferences that are popping up on this. And this could be the end of college football as we know it and college sports as we know it. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think they're going to accept this settlement and they're going to take their money over 10 years and Ole Miss is going to pay the $300 million over 10 years and things like that. But that is preferable over basically blowing the whole thing up to where Ole Miss has a $1.2 billion, $900 million, some exorbitant amount of money could pop up if Ole Miss lost this lawsuit as opposed to not settling. And this, now to make sure, this is not an Ole Miss lawsuit, it's an NCAA lawsuit, but Ole Miss is the NCAA. Alabama is the NCAA. The member institutions is the organization. So whenever I say they, that's what I mean by that. Now, they're also rushing to codify other rules as well. We talked about them having kind of some nasty languages for the collectives, and I am all about the collectives. They are huge proponents of mine, and they've hooked me up with players and all of that. But the NCAA, the language against them is interesting, especially as much as collectives are a part of college sports right now. Now, in the rules, like getting rid of the walk-on in college athletics, that's so weird. The roster size will be dictated more than the scholarship limit. It won't be a college football roster with 85 scholarship limits. It might be a college football roster with 70 roster spots or something like that. That is the avenue we're going. The NCAA is actively looking for ways to have the sport and put the sport on without, I don't know, subjecting themselves to further lawsuits. The NCAA loses lawsuits. If the NCAA goes to court, they lose. That's just the way this works now. But I think Ole Miss probably needs to work to protect itself. It's also one of the reasons I said that went like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and what's going on there. Yes, Ole Miss needs to work to protect itself from the NCAA. And yes, I realized that I said that Ole Miss was the NCAA just a few minutes ago. They still play favorites. And everybody that is old enough to know what's going on understands what I'm talking about. But it's very interesting stuff. And this is going to completely change the culture of college athletics for the foreseeable future. Let's fast forward to 2040. Just 16 years. 16 years. What does college athletics look like? In the age of Title IX, I think Title IX is a court case away from that being gone completely and schools not having to abide by it. Once that happens, college sports are going to go away quickly. The less money you have, the less revenue sharing you have to do. And all of a sudden, you bring in those, take away those other expenses. You remove the women's rifle team, the women's tennis team, the men's golf team. In most cases around the country, you're going to see universities remove the baseball team from their university. And you're going to have essentially 3, maybe 4 sports on campus. Football is going to stick around because football it's not going anywhere. Basketball is sticking around because basketball is not going anywhere. Women's basketball has earned a right at the table. Okay. It's not going anywhere either. Baseball is the fourth sport and is the iffy. The Big Ten is probably going to do away with it entirely. It's going to become a Big 12, ACC, and SEC sport, very regional, very niche. That's just the way that is. If you are a cold weather climate, let's say Kentucky or above, Kentucky might do away with it, honestly. You probably are not going to be playing baseball in the winter. Lacrosse, Virginia and North Carolina really enjoy it, but are they really going to play it? No, it's gone too. And it's going to be whittled down, and players are going to lose opportunity. The real loser, ironically, from all of this is going to be the athlete. Because what the athletes in the past that have done in order to get theirs, they just want to get theirs. They have completely poo-pooed their athlete, and they made it to where they've crossed the Rubicon, essentially. And now schools are going to go after things like Title IX. Now schools are going to go after minimum sports. Now they're going to say, hey, we could be just Division I and play football only. We're fine with that. Maybe football, basketball, baseball, and women's basketball. Just those four sports, but we can be D1 and we can be one of the larger schools in the country. That is something that is happening. And you're not going to have a tennis facility in 2040. You are not going to have a golf team in 2040. It's just not going to happen because Title IX and things, you're going to make things about the bottom line. Whether you make these players employees or not, which this will not necessarily make them employees, but it's going to make them worthy of a paycheck. All of a sudden, you're going to see players get kicked off the team for first offense. Whenever you do that, if you cause any trouble at all, the first chance they can get rid of you, they will. All of the FedEx academic centers and stuff like that, that's going away. That's gone. You're going to have a situation to where they are no longer babying them and they are treating them like professional athletes. They're not kids anymore. And even now, going into this 2024 season, I'm just like, hey, I'm going to cover this in a different way. And I'm going to look at this differently because these are professional athletes. They're getting paid. These aren't 18-year-old walk-on kids. This isn't a player starting as a true freshman. Chris Osgood's not walking through that door to play quarterback at Ole Miss. This is a different situation, which means that I have to handle this in a different kind of way. So thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen. When we come back, we will talk about, what are the other schools that are all in right now? Ole Miss is all in for a national championship in 2024. What are the other schools that they need to watch out for? Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and we're part of the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Amazon Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. All right, really interesting stuff. And the House ruling, like I said, it could change everything. That is so much money. And it has the potential to be so much more. Honestly, if you want to be afraid of anything, be afraid they reject that settlement. If they reject that settlement, it gets weird. It gets really weird. But as it sits right now, I do think that no matter what happens in the NIL space, you're going to have football. It may not just look like you think it's going to look, but I think you're going to have football. Now, depending on how it goes, you may not have baseball. You definitely won't have golf, and I don't think tennis and soccer and softball is going to happen either. But if this happens, you're going to have football, essentially. But Ole Miss has been all in on this 2024 season basically for 6 months. We've talked about this over and over and over again. And there's a couple of other schools that are at least equally as all in as Ole Miss in the transfer portal window this year and all of that stuff. And two of them specifically I want to talk about. One is the Oregon Ducks. Oregon Ducks are getting ready for their first season in the Big Ten with Dan Lanning. It will be interesting to see what they do in that conference. It's going to be so weird to see Oregon and USC and UCLA and Washington playing in the Big Ten this season. But Oregon has gone completely all in. They've picked up like Evan Stewart. They've added talent after talent after talent, and they've recruited high school wise very well. All of this on a team that was very good coming into this year as well. There is not going to be a Bo Nix, but they picked up Dylan Gabriel in the transfer portal. This is going to be a good football team. Another team that has shown out in this early part of the season is the Ohio State Buckeyes, where Quinshon Judkins is, who finished third. If you look at my top 5 Ole Miss running backs of all time, he was third last night. But he is somebody, and they've added a whole bunch of people as well. Everybody talks about the talent that Ohio State has accumulated, but this is the problem with Ohio State a year ago. Kevin Wilson went on to Tulsa. When he left, that offense just essentially died. Ryan Day went out and had to hire an offensive coordinator, got Chip Kelly from the UCLA Bruins, went from a head coach, a Big Ten head coach, to a Big Ten offensive coordinator. That kind of lets you know hierarchy and tiers. But it's a situation to where they're going to look a little bit differently. We need to see what the quarterbacks look like. We need to see how they play. We want to see how the football works. Now, other players that have been active in the transfer portal will be like the Colorado Buffaloes, but don't worry about the Colorado Buffaloes. I mean, they might win 6 games this year. They could, but there's a chance at this point that the disaster just happens. When you look at other players, Auburn's been active in the transfer portal. They've needed to be. Florida's been active in the transfer portal. They've needed to be. It's not enough to get them to the playoff level. It's enough to get them maybe to a bowl game, and in Florida's case, to get 4 wins maybe. But it's a situation to where people going all in this season and all of that is not a big list. Now, you're going to have to deal with Alabama, obviously. Georgia, one of the most talented teams in the entire country. I mean, top 100 players all over their defense. Texas is going to be good. Those teams are pretty much the short list of who Ole Miss will be competing with in this all-in year. But because of this House settlement that is pending, this might be a more playoff or bust year than any of us even knew, any of us even realized. And that raises the stakes. It raises the pressure. We get to see who makes the plays and who stands out. Ole Miss is adding a ton of players all over the field that can make plays. I am fully expecting them to be the dude. Okay. No matter who's out on the field, I think they're going to end up being the dude that's won that competition. But this House ruling, after it's over, after this season, when the final gun for the 2024 football season ends and we get ready for the 2025 season, I don't know. I just don't know. I know I'm going to enjoy football because I think football is going to always be around. And I'm a type of person, I don't try and collect athletes. I don't try and do all of that stuff. I just enjoy the football. I enjoy the moments, and that's just the way I am. So I think football is going to continue to exist. I think the settlement is probably going to get accepted. But, and this is very important, everything may be about to change. Everything. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day, where we have the most perspective surrounding Ole Miss sports, and it's one of the many reasons why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast, and thank you for that. This week's top 5 topic, top 5 Ole Miss running backs. But for your second listen, go to the Locked On Sports Today channel. They've launched their first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. For those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Howdy toddy, everyone.